Guys, it's John at National Sports Entertainment, and I wanted to go into just the saga of week 17 because, as I say, this isn't the playoff path. This is the road to WrestleMania, i.e., the Super Bowl, and so many games this week just indicated that so heavily. Some cases I probably should have seen in retrospect, like the Bears. I figured they'd have a three-way race for the Falcons, but I think the Bears can still make the playoffs, which is just funny enough. And then we got the Colts playing the Texans next week. Of course, they're going to have identical records. Should have looked at that. I thought the Raiders might have made it interesting. And the Chiefs were able to win, which is fine. They're continuing this narrative that they're barely beating people. We got the Broncos. Those are the games we missed. Got the Broncos, Steelers, Saints. Rams got the win, no cover. Texans. So about a split as far as picks. Now, as far as narratives, I think that they're giving away so much. Just like not, and this is probably going to go in my continuing NFL saga. If you haven't seen that playlist, it's dating back to last year, and they're employing the exact same damage control methods that they did last year. By the way, I've never seen a half-point spread. This isn't, I don't understand the logic. I guess it could end in a draw. Maybe they're tipping their hand, but yeah, I've never seen football. I don't think I've ever seen a half-point spread, but I guess the Packers are half-point favorites. I think they're gonna win. I went into that in my video. If you didn't see that one, now the game everybody's talking about. I didn't get to really go into this. We had the Lions winning. Of course they didn't, but this game still revealed a lot because I think they completely know that there's let's say 20% of NFL fans that know it's scripted, and what they're trying to do is get a high percentage of that 20% group to believe it's scripted just by the referees. We have rogue referees running around that are just above the league. They have more power than this guy here, or girl. I can't even tell if it's a guy or girl, to be honest. Has more, I think it's a guy, has more, yeah, there we go, status than Jerry Jones or the owner of the Lions, whoever that is. And it's a joke. Like, these referees, this is why I mentioned in my last video, we're kind of off the ground, doing well as far as YouTube goes, which is great. They cut us off at the knees the first time. Larry Johnson just came out, if you guys hadn't heard about that. He said, this is coming from him, that Franco Harris, his death was suspicious, and he was invited to some kind of ceremony to speak, and very shortly after he died, Larry said he got a very similar distinction where they gave him this opportunity. He turned it down because he didn't want to get Franco Harris. So, when people say nobody ever comes out, just not true. They just treat those guys like they're crazy. And Tim Donaghy's a guy that, again, he got scapegoated. So I just want to, in the interview, just go into if a referee were to just decide, you know what, I'm going to, Vegas be damned, the league be damned, the owners be damned, I want Dallas to win, I'm going to screw over Detroit. And, I just can't imagine that would happen. I really don't. The referee would be gone so quick. So I do have no doubt that what they're doing is they're trying to scapegoat the referees, because Rex Ryan even had this passionate speech about how dare you blame the players didn't do anything wrong. And that's what they want in people's mind. They want the players victimized. This poor offensive lineman who, to be fair, the players, this is where everyone says, oh, it's this grand, okay, everyone has to be on it, the water boy has to be in on it, and they try and make it over satirical. But this is a perfect example of how the players don't need to be in on it. Campbell has to be in on it, and he sold it pretty well. But all he needed to do was tell the wrong guy to report. And even in his post-conference speech, he basically admits to it. While blaming the refs, he says, we told 68 to report, or we told 70 to report, 68 not to, and 68 reported, and they threw the ball to him. And he didn't really clarify, so Dan Campbell could have just had the wrong guy report, ran up the play. The referees they're in on it, they know what's going to happen. And this poor third-string lineman has no idea what happened. I believe happens all the time. I don't think it would be smart to let practice squad, second string, new young players all in on what's going on. I think as you rise up in status, you start getting privy to that information. But anyway, not to go on a tangent, but I think we can see this coming. Pat McAfee tried this, and that's why I said I'm going to probably include this in this playlist. Pat McAfee did like 5, 6 straight days last week of the season. I'm sorry, last week of the season, going into, oh my gosh, it's all over Twitter. Everyone thinks it's scripted. And first he tried the mockery. It was like the 5 stages of grief. First they tried ignoring it altogether. That didn't work. They tried some bargaining. Then you almost seen him get a little bit angry. And I don't know each stage, but you've seen those stages all met. We had the mockery, which I consider the same as bargaining, and then it basically turned into acceptance. They just tried to spin it where it's like, okay, the NFL's got a problem, but then McAfee kind of 180'd on us, and he's like, oh yeah, but it's all the referees. The referee is that bad. The referees are that bad, and that's what they're doing now. It happened with Tony with the Chiefs. So for once we saw the Chiefs get screwed, which people aren't used to. So they're mixing a lot of things up. But at the end of the day, each week, you hear the announcers say it more. Oh, they flipped the script. Oh, this is a great movie. I can't make this. I was watching the game. I think it was the Saturday game, the Lions and Cowboys. This very game, and I'm pretty sure they referred to the players. I think it was Al Michaels, whoever was calling the game. He said, "Okay, and here let's take a look at our cast of characters." Like, you don't say these things just like tongue in cheek. There's a reason they're saying these things. The one thing I'm a little concerned about is both my Super Bowl picks just routed their opponents and took the first seed. So a lot of people keep telling me the Niners, Ravens might be too obvious. To that I say, they did a very similar thing last year when the fans came out, saying I think it's scripted. The league mocked them, and then they put the 2 most obvious teams in there. They put the Eagles, who had ran roughshod, just like the Ravens have been doing, and they put the Chiefs, who have Mahomes and had a much better team than they do this year. So I think if you do Lions Browns, I think that's just gonna have people more on the bandwagon that it's scripted. So I'm not really buying that it's too obvious narrative for the Niners Ravens, even though I'm not loving the fact that they just cremated their opponents, because now there probably will be a lot of money on these teams. But again, Vegas has such a way to extract money. They can get the result, their desired outcome, and still extract money from the public. You have to imagine we are 95% of the way through the season. So much money is already put on these teams. For all we know, the Jets have the highest handle because preseason, so many people just piled money on them. We really don't know. So as the season progresses, like the Niners, yeah, they consistently did well, but during that 3-week stretch, I'd imagine money was flying in on other teams. So again, I just don't think the oh, it's so obvious argument works. I think nowadays, especially, they want a pretty, quote, obvious Super Bowl result, because again, while they're mocking the people that are questioning, I don't think they want people questioning things. So I think we're going to see some similar stories. Again, now that the Falcons have been eliminated, I think the Bucs make more sense because Baker can play the Rams, which is interesting. But again, that same storyline, the Lions-Rams seems to write itself. It seems like that's where they're heading. So I have no doubt they're going to meet up. They already teased it with the Ravens playing Flacco. So they've teased it with a few different teams. We got Hill and Mahomes. Like, this is going to be, just buckle up, because this is going to be the closest, in my opinion, to WWE style booking we've ever seen. And we already kind of see it happening. One of the members of the playoff is now going to be the owner of AEW, the Jags owner. So it's all very interesting, in my opinion. And just some of these games were pretty ridiculous. The Eagles game, we got this one. We had the cover. I would have liked to take the money line. But you could just see these games. These upsets are they do a good job of masking which ones are upsets. Like the Giants was kind of similar. But you can kind of tell by how they just find a way to keep the other team in it, even when they shouldn't be in it. It's just, it's common sense in a lot of cases. So I wasn't in the Discord or much today, but I'm sure there was a lot of people that commented something to the effect of, I grabbed Arizona live. This game looks like a trap. because I see it every week in my Discord. People just see these games, snuff them right out. So that was one obvious one. And then we got, like I said, the Chiefs. They got their win, so they'll get in the playoffs. I imagine they're gonna get a rematch with the Dolphins, and Dolphins just got pounded. So, I again, you could say that's to get money on the Raven or off the Ravens. I'm sorry, on the Ravens. No one's gonna pick the Dolphins now. I know a few people who liked the Dolphins. I just think they're going to be established as a good team. Really, nothing more. Missing a few pieces, as they put it, just by the way the team's been pushed. So yeah, I can do an official playoff video. When the playoffs start, it's really not much different than what I had. Of course, like I had the Falcons getting in. That's not going to happen. But the Texans and Jags, I had them getting in my last video. Still don't believe the Colts get in. This just seems like a perfect opportunity. And, in a perfect script, you'd have Richardson versus Stroud, right? That's probably what they wanted. I think Richardson probably really got hurt because I imagine all year they were just, grubbing their hands together, just waiting for Stroud versus Richardson, knowing people would love to see that matchup in the final week of the season. They probably had some pretty good things planned for Richardson because there's no way Gardner Minshew's making the playoffs. They're just not going to waste a playoff spot on a guy that half the people don't even know. So, yeah, I think we're going to have most of our playoff picks right. Packers here, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a draw with this game. It would keep Chicago in the mix, and the half point was pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, the Lions, Cowboys, if you're curious, like a lot of people are just blaming refs. And to me, we're just going to see a lot more of that. We might see it in tonight's game. They love to push how bad the refs are. This is 2 years in a row now. Again, if you watch the whole playlist, it goes into other things that the NFL, I think, was deflecting from. Some deeper topics is what I'll say. But as far as the refs just get blamed as these incompetent idiots who have no idea what they're doing, and they're ruining the game. And people just have to stop and think. Like, unless you think these referees are in higher standing than the owners, the people who literally own the players' likeness and all the different stuff, then you really have to look at the optics if it makes any sense. Like, if a referee was defying in this case, this referee helped out Jerry Jones, but you get my point. Defying Jerry Jones, defying any of these owners, there's no way they wouldn't be immediately dealt with. They would never be seen again. So I think people need to start understanding it's just like WWE. The announcers and referees play dumb, pretend to be doing their thing, and you got the actors in there, and the actors are the ones who are selling everything. The only difference is I think the NFL just does a terrible job selling. Like, Dan Campbell was basically selling the loss well before he ran the 2-point conversion for the third time. And again, like, it was a ridiculously stupid decision. You're going up against a team that the Philly push barely works against because they just stuff people in the backfield, and they go for a 2-point conversion. Then they're at the 7-yard line, and they go for it again. And yeah, then of course they're going to go for it at the 3.5. But it was just ridiculous in my opinion as far as the coaching decision, and it got completely overlooked because they happened to get score, because that was probably part of the whole thing. But more importantly, because the referee, the referee made a particular call, and it just completely negated the fact that this guy was analytically, psychologically, just from any aspect, technically, way better off kicking that extra point in a game against the Cowboys, like I said, where it was a defense-oriented game. So for the people that were questioning the call, and then not really the referee's call, I think that's the one. The NFL doesn't want people focusing on that. They want people focusing on, it was a great heroic moment that was stripped away by the refs, just like Mahomes, the Kelsey play was stripped away. And again, some of these plays, for them to happen, the defense just has to be in on it. I saw an opening kickoff return by the Patriots today. It was laughable, just how they let this guy score. And I saw a pick six I think it was the Eagles game, where I think Kyler Murray threw it, and he's trying to make a tackle or someone on the offense. And I understand they're offensive players, but it looked like Madden. It was just laughable how bad these tackling, these supposed tackles are. So I'm very curious to see next week, see what happens with the refs again, including tonight. I'm curious what they do with the referees tonight. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the Lions, just give my opinion on it. I don't think it was just a bad call by a ref. I think the entire thing's scripted up. And again, they gave us a little more information. Rex Ryan went into this, a few other people, that basically the referees know every play that's not a routine play that's going to be ran well before the game. So it just opens up the door to so much more chaos because it just proves that's why they're called officials. They officiate to make sure these plays are being ran the way they should be. They're not really paying attention to the holds or anything like that. You'll see a lot of flags coming out 5 seconds after the play. Like if a play goes to shit, you'll see the flag come out late, or sometimes they'll throw the early flag just in case something doesn't happen. And if you notice something, I pointed this out last year, and now people are talking about it because now it's being done just blatantly. Referees throwing flags, and then if I guess they get the desired outcome, they just say there was no flag on the play. Like that should not happen. That's a discretionary flag. So if you're a line judge and you see a hold, you call it. Some schmuck comes running out from the backfield or from the secondary and tells you something else. You're not just going to change your mind and get overruled. So it makes absolutely no sense, for them to be doing that. So you could see that the referees they're just like wrestling referees. They're there to make sure the outcome of the match goes the way it should. It doesn't, in my opinion, take away any of the clear, blatant entertaining, and that's all it is. It's not competition that these players are doing. The players are just as complicit. They're not going to have the players look like they're the ones shaving points or purposely missing assignments. They can just easily blame the referee, and they can let the announcers explain away, just like an announcer explains away how a guy in wrestling gets caught with a drop kick. They do the same thing in the NFL. They explain how a guy gets blocked out of the play, or he thought it was going to be a pass, he bit, and they do a great job of it, but it's all production. So I didn't want to go on a rant, but this was a pretty crazy week. It was a week where certain teams had to win for Week 18 to make any sense. And again, for most of the must-win games, like 50-50 games, playoff-type games, we had missed a few covers, of course. Bills didn't cover, Rams didn't cover. But as far as leaving the divisions open, and I think it just made a lot of sense. So I think next week we're going to be pretty over the target again, just because, again, I think of how they push certain teams, certain players, and just how now they're pushing this whole referee nonsense. So we'll see what happens, but like I said, I have a feeling we're going to see Pat McAfee. He's probably already talked about the Lions, but he's like the number one goon who just comes out and talks about what they want him to talk about. So I have no doubt we'll see McAfee, some of these other talking heads coming out saying, oh, do we need new refs for the playoffs? So what are we going to do? These guys are out of control. This is the worst I've ever seen it. Again, same story as last year. It just, I guess they feel like the people have the attention spans of gnats, so they just roll out the same sound bites. So yeah, let me know what you think. If you think the Cowboys game went according to script, I can't imagine it didn't. And if you think that's just something that happens every week, or they're trying to get people talking about the referees for a specific reason. And again, for the Super Bowl, I'm curious your guys' opinion. Like I said, mine hasn't really changed. Whenever my team win, like the teams I have picked win by this kind of margin, it has me a little more apprehensive of them. And I will say, and I'm not trying to hedge here, I'm just trying to be honest, with the 49ers, if not the Ravens, I went into how the Chiefs do make sense. It's another rematch, and they keep pushing this Mahomes versus the world mentality. So I feel like nothing makes more sense than him to, go through Miami. He'd have to win away in most of these games too, by the way. Go through Miami, go through Baltimore, and then he's going up against the freaking most stacked team ever in the 49ers. I think that's a narrative. So that is in the back of my mind. But I still think Lamar right now. I think they might finally give, with all the deaths that happened at the beginning of the year, I think that's in the same saga I'm putting this one into. I don't know. They're in different playlists maybe, but all the death that happened at the beginning of the year, I thought that was very suspicious. A lot of times it's revealing. So yeah, nothing's really changed my mind there. Although I'll say I'm way more committed on the Niners than I am on an AFC team. They've been banging on the door. And like I said, I think if anything, they're going to go with a more obvious Super Bowl because of all the people that are questioning the legitimacy. What way to get people not questioning it than have the two teams that should make it make it? And that's kind of what they did last year. So since they're doing the same stories as last year, blaming the refs, doing the same kind of satirical mockery of anybody who dares say it might not be, that dares call sports entertainment. I feel like there's a good chance they'll repeat the same Super Bowl script, which, not the same teams, but the same type teams that made similar runs as far as the year. And we're looking at an MVP again. We had Hurts last year. This year it's got to be Lamar. So you'd have an MVP versus a team that did good. Same thing that we got with the Chiefs and Eagles. So yeah, that's basically it. No Monday night game. That our Monday night's the Vikings. They're up 3-0 right now. Or Packers are up 3-0 right now. Again, I think Packers make more sense. The Vikings, I think they're going to do a soft rebuild, whereas the Packers, giving Jordan Love a little bit of, like I said, no pun intended, some love, I think makes a lot of sense. So Happy New Year's to everybody. I wanted to get this out because I figured people were going to be busy, and it was just such a nonsensical week. I didn't get to watch most of these games, but the few I did, boy, were they bangers, like as far as it just being like wrestling. Like I said, the Cardinals-Eagles was very comical, as was the Bills game. Some of these I didn't watch. I watched the Lions one last night, mostly just the ending because I was like checking every once in a while, and then when they were making that charge down the field, I was like, all right, well, we know they're scoring. What's going to happen? I actually did think there was going to be a blocked extra point when I was watching it, like before they went on to go for two, and I was like, they're about to score. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering if they shanked the extra point here because it was so unexpected. But I guess again, they like building gimmicks. Dan Campbell's gimmick is being this crazy, a balls to the wall coach, and the fans seem to love it. So they're going to continue that. So they're kind of a live, die by the sword team, and you can see each team just kind of getting their own gimmick, and I find that interesting too. Some teams are just more quiet assassins, whereas others are more loud, and they're just coming out more and more like wannabe wrestlers every day, in my opinion. So yeah, again, have a happy new year. Thanks to everybody that's been showing all the support. One play I like tomorrow is LSU to go under. They've gone over like every game this year. So the College Bowl game, I do think that LSU is going to go under I think it's 57.5. I think that's a really strong play. And yeah, there's no NFL, so the next NFL we'll be covering will be Week 18, and then the playoffs, where we did really good last year. Once the playoffs is set, I went into this before, the lines are a lot closer typically. You're not usually going to have really uneven lines. So you could get win no covers, but typically just getting who's going to win is good in the playoffs. And last year, once the playoffs were set, we did pretty good, and I think it's going to be the same this year. I had the Niners last year too, just so you know. I did like them last year as well. And of course, they lost to the Eagles with no quarterback. Again, I think that's just another perfect redemption story, which is why they teased Purdy getting hurt. Oh no, we're going to get the same thing again. Again, I think they just kind of run these exact same scripts and imagine that, okay, it worked last year, it should work this year. So take care and happy earnings.